Almost that time.
Yes.
And I think we will. Should I ring the bell at 3?
Do you have a school bell? You know, we have a school bell.
I do.
You have one? Oh, you have one just like mine. I think I have one too. Where's my school bell? I don't see it. It's always been in my office, and all of a sudden I don't see it.
Well, I've got a school bell for you.
Thank you. No, that's it.
Does that work? All right, is school in session?
I think maybe it is.
Oh, everyone take your seats. Hopefully fill up a tall glass of something that makes you happy. Good afternoon, and welcome to the first of 3 national conversations during our annual September Slow Food Membership Campaign. It is worth noting that we remain really greatly inspired by the lessons that we learned in Denver at Slow Food Nations in July. And one of the more inspiring and hopeful messages that we have received since are the numerous requests from folks who were unable to attend, or if they attended, they didn't get to attend every session, as you can expect. And we had a specific request: could we share some of the recordings that were taking place there? And if you go to the Facebook or the Slow Food USA Facebook page, you can find some of those. But more so, they heard that what was so special was the conversations and the discussion and the informality of the discussions, which is of course what we are very much about. And it was felt that during September, when we renew our support and make new again, renew our commitment to slow food and to the community, that we would run several town hall calls during the month of September to keep the conversations moving forward. And we have 2 more coming this month, one in the middle of the month on the 15th, which is a Friday. Master Gardener John Kuykendall. I don't know if you got to spend any time with him, Alice, but he will be joined with Poppy Tooker, broadcaster whom I know you know, and Christina Melton, the filmmaker, who made the film Deeply Rooted, which is about preserving biodiversity in southern Louisiana. So we're very excited to bring him on. He was so popular, people couldn't get enough of him in Denver. And then, you know, one of the other commitments that we felt really did sing in Denver was the food justice programming. So in late September, we will stage another conversation that will address the dignity of labor from field to fork, with a discussion of some of the organizers of our food justice committee, who assembled really some of the most challenging and exciting programming that we had. But today, I am extremely pleased to be joined by Alice Waters, whose food revolution is, here we go. Let me catch up. I'm sorry, I now realize I have a screen that I have to attend to. So I'm distracted because I'm looking at you, Alice, but I do have some information up on the screen to help people to join the conversation. But today, what I'm really excited is to have you on with me. Your food revolution may have begun in a restaurant half a century ago, but it has since grown far beyond the confines of Chez Panisse, and has inspired generations of chefs, generations of farmers and educators who embrace the idea that education should be edible. What I also often think about when I stumble upon the Slow Food Manifesto is that you were there in Paris for the signing of the manifesto. Do you remember that weekend or that day vividly? Because it was an extraordinary assembly of all kinds of food heroes and misfits in Paris for the signing of the manifesto. You were there.
What year was that, Richard?
It was 1986.
1986, you know, I wish I had been there, but I wasn't there.
You weren't there.
I
Okay.
wasn't there in 1986.
You
I
must
think
have
I
been there
was the
in
Soviet
spirit
Union.
or from a, you may have sent your signing from afar. Is that
Uh,
possible?
no,
From Berkeley?
Carlo until a while later. And
Hmm.
when I did meet him in San Francisco, that's when I realized that Chez Panisse has always been a slow food movement and that I was part of this international organization. And we just fell in each other's arms, and that's where I've been ever since.
So it's sort of the movement that found you because you realized you were already there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was just what I was thinking, and I think Carla Petrini and I were both sort of edibly educated in Paris, in France, and
Hmm.
we have that deeply inside us. We were both there when it was a slow food country before before
It lost
McDonald's.
its way before it lost its way.
Yeah.
Um, well, I would love to remind any of the folks we have on the line, and we have a full house, that to join the conversation, we have received several questions via email over the weekend. In fact, a great number of questions. We encourage you to use the chat box or to email comms@slowfoodusa.org to submit a question. And before we jump right in, if I can just make one quick infomercial. This is our membership campaign, and the first 15 members who join during this conversation will receive a free copy of the Readers to Eaters book, Alice Waters and the Trip to Delicious. And I think at the start of the school year, this is a great book to accompany a school garden, to integrate the ideas and the ideas of edible education, whether it's books at bedtime or books at school. But this is a wonderful children's book. And we're, and
Richard,
yes?
I will throw in Fanny in France, which is another children's book about food. As
Awesome.
many copies as you want, I'll give you.
That's wonderful. So you hear that, 2 books for 1 membership. So first 15, jump on board. You can log online to slowfoodusa.org, join. Is that right? Join. Yes, I have it right. So today what we are really excited to do is we want to walk people through some very specific activities that you have set in motion in more than one location. But I was lucky to experience in Denver, and those who were at Slow Food Nations were able to experience it. But it was big, it was ambitious, it was extraordinary. This idea of school lunch as an academic subject, and I've got a couple slides so I can get you to maybe describe in detail what the method to the madness is. But then beyond that, this idea of school lunch as an academic subject is not just one finite, narrow idea like a school garden or changing the cafeteria. It is an idea that is a big, ambitious idea of utilizing education, utilizing large public institutions, public education, to transform not only the culture of the school and the kids and the families that touch it, but also to transform rural America. So this idea of school-supported agriculture is something that you have penned, Alice, and something that speaks to some bigger issues about our national priorities and how to shift the culture towards mutual aid and interdependence between urban and rural. So these are the ideas that we will tackle over the next 50 minutes. But maybe to get us there, I don't know if you can see Alice on the screen. this marvelous photograph from Denver, where we fed, I want to say 500, maybe 525 people. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And in a setup beneath a tent. Now, of course, imagine that this is not beneath a tent and feeding food activists, but actually in a cafeteria, set up much in the way that cafeterias are set up. And this is what it looked like when you walked into your school cafeteria. That it would be a different kind of experience. And if we think of school lunch, much of the discussion, and I know that next month will be National Farm to School Month, and we'll be hearing a lot about this issues of how do we bring the farms and the schools closer, is how to look at it from the standpoint of supply, the farms, and how to look at it from the standpoint of demand, the experience that the children have as eaters in the equation. And so maybe keeping this picture in mind, we can start off here, and I think you've probably got one or two of these in hand, is the menu itself. Tell us a little bit about this menu, or if you'd like to back up and describe maybe in one full swoop what this lunch is like as an experience from sort of beginning to end.
I wanted to feed everyone this idea of school lunch being part of the academic day. And the reason that we need this to happen is that 20 minutes in a sort of fast food circumstance, which is what goes on at lunchtime in most schools in this country, is not enough time for children to digest the idea, even if the food is real, which in most cafeterias it is not. And the kids who need it the most don't even eat it. So this is a way that we could imagine taking academic minutes and applying them to a lunch hour, or even a little bit longer than an hour, so that we could really have the focus and the time to know about food and the experience of eating together. Because I'm imagining that we would all sit down together. That's why we wanted to show in Denver how that could happen efficiently and effectively, and what kind of conversations might happen. So we made up this menu, especially for slow food, because we wanted to use only the ingredients that we could find in and around Denver. So we were supporting the organic growers. That was in our mind. And so we decided that we would connect it to a lesson about biodiversity, about the Three Sisters farming, the corn, the beans, and the squash, how they grow together. And we put the menu both in English and in Spanish, with the idea that this could, in fact, be a language class where the kids were learning Spanish. It could be that. And we put that down. But the way that we served it was very unique, because everybody who was at a table of 10 had a job. And the job was to, for the first course, well, this was all served family style, I have to say that to begin with. So each person would take the job of going and picking up the squash. Another person would pick up the beans. Another person would pick up the tamales. Another person would pick up the salad or the fruit. And while they had left the table, the 5 people that remained would set the table. They would put the plates around, they would put the napkins down, they would pour the water. They would make sure it looked good. And when the food came back, everyone would be served together. Now, guess how long it took to serve 500 people?
So to serve 500 people without an assembly line. So something that should be very difficult and complicated. How quickly did we do that?
In 5 minutes. I think it might have been 7. It might have been 7. But it was
we'll give them 2 minutes. They were adults, so clearly they're not moving as quickly.
As quickly as children. But the food was in bowls and all ready just to be picked up. And so it's like walking across an auditorium and picking up that bowl and bringing it back to the table. And it felt like magic for everybody who experienced that. And I wanted it to be very real in that way. And the kids all came. It was a group of kids, and they went around the dining room just in the most hospitable way, just helping people to get more if they wanted, or taking away plates that were finished. And it was so, I don't know, it really touched me that it happened so easily. And it's again, something that fast food nation has told us, that it's impossible for kids to sit at a table. They don't like this kind of food. They don't want to be seated to eat. That they can't be part of the service. They're not interested in that. And of course, those are all myths, that they love to be asked to be able to do jobs that are meaningful, to help with the cooking. They were behind the kitchens and grilling some of the zucchini for this event.
So when we are, I mean, you alluded to something about changing the culture and the structure of cafeterias in schools. It's as if the answer to every question is no, it cannot be done. Whether it is the quality of the food, the sourcing of the food, the fact that the kids, children are not familiar with whole grains and beans and are unfamiliar with these foods, and therefore they will not eat them. This question of not just the content of the food, but the form in which it is delivered. And if we are funneled down a conversation of why everything is so difficult, well, then we will piecemeal ourselves to death, where we compromise every little piece, that we end up not actually adding value or not transforming the school lunch. What I saw in Denver was school lunch could be presented not only as a history lesson, a geography lesson. I mean, it has academic pursuits and I can go back to the slide, on the menu itself, or not the menu, the placemat. So the placemat tells a story of the food. And I think we've learned so much more about behavior change. If eaters have a connection to the food, then they think about it differently. So if they have a connection to the food, and it's not just some fuel that they are fed, but it is actually part of their maturation, part of their socialization, learning how to discuss the artwork of the placemat, maybe designing the artwork of the placemat, learning the civics lesson of dividing up the division of labor between who's going to fill the water glasses, and of course they are glass because children can actually hold a glass and enjoy the experience differently, because it's treating them as the dignity of human beings rather than cogs in a wheel. That's a very different experience. So it's not just the content that you're talking about, the quality of the food and the sourcing, but how it's delivered. and delivered in a way that is very different from how it's delivered today. Isn't that right?
Exactly. I mean, we have to deliver it with slow food values. It has to have the beauty. We put flowers on all the tables, and we have done that for many years, 20 years at the Edible Schoolyard, because the kids, when they walk into the room, they know that somebody cares about them. And just imagine, 85% of the kids in this country don't have one meal with their family. So what's happening? What's happening out there? They're not having a conversation about what happened during the day. They're not learning how to say please and thank you. They're not participating, I think, in a primary right of civilization. They are grazing in a fast food culture and absorbing those ideas. The ideas that more is better, that it's okay to eat in your car. There's always more where that came from. That cooking is drudgery, that farming is too. And it's what's changed our world. So we are trying to bring these kids back to their senses, to empower them to be part of this experience, and to make it relevant to what they're learning in school. That's what we've been doing in the Edible Schoolyard Garden and the kitchen classroom, and it works like a charm.
Where else have you staged this school lunch as an academic subject?
Now, we first did it at the Citizens University up in Seattle. And we did it for a conference that they were having. And it was an amazing experience for them too, because it was like teaching about equality and the values of social justice. And we were talking about where all that food came from and honoring the farmers. And so you're doing a lot of things at the same time. You're really supporting farmers who take care of the land. And you're at the same time, you're in that very season, you're eating something from that moment in time in Seattle. And it was compelling. And we're about to go down to UCLA. They're having a conference on rethinking education in the graduate studies department. And we're going to feed them this idea. 250 people are gathering there very soon. But we are getting requests from all kinds of people.
Where would you love to do this? What would be exciting or provocative or meaningful?
I want to do it in Sacramento for all of the legislators, right there at the government seat. I wouldn't mind doing it in Iowa. Very, very interesting, because there is someone running for Congress there who is really preaching slow food values.
Well, speaking of Iowa, I mean, let's turn, because I think the compelling case for how the experience on the demand side of the equation, if we were to split up supply and demand as two sort of workable pieces here, the demand of, you know, kids and families who should demand a different kind of eating experience for their children, because it's right and because it can make school lunch mean so much more, is one piece of the equation. The other is the sourcing food in a purposeful fashion, in ensuring that the food has a context that we can use when we're interacting with the children who are on the demand side demanding better food. But on the supply side, there are so many, and I would say exciting steps that are being taken to transform the cafeteria, whether it's the work we're doing on garden to cafeteria, of breaking down the norms of cafeterias who, of course, have become increasingly less familiar with and less capable of handling scratch cooking. The difficulty of getting products into the school system because of price and insurance requirements and so forth. But let's say we address those, we begin to break down those barriers and make the compelling case of why food should be sourced from the region, and utilizing programs that exist, but reworking them to meet certain goals. What are our goals? We want food that feeds healthy, delicious, nutritious, culturally meaningful food for the kids, which means in many cases finding the food that's already being grown, or reworking the supply chain that gets food into school cafeterias. This sounds like an investment, and maybe an investment in rural America, maybe something that we've sort of talked about it in terms of like a Marshall Plan for rural America, for the dignity of the farmers, and that their food has an end product that we all care about, which is the future of our country in the schools.
Richard, I'm always impressed with people who make models and show us how this could happen. And I have a friend who wrote this cookbook, an artist friend who many of you might know, Oliver Eliasson. And he's in Berlin, okay? And he only serves organic, local food all year long in Berlin. And I said to him, to all of the people who work in his studio, and I said, but how do you do this? And he said, we have 2 people that are dedicated to do it. And this is one of the lunches that they serve. And it's always something hot like a soup. There's some lovely salads, there's some whole grains, but every day it's different. And we're talking about when the weather goes down to, 15 below, it's still possible to do this. And it's because they are really focused on grains and using, preserving the harvest so that they have the things they need for the winter months, to think about smoked fish, to not have a minimum of meat. And I think we could do this any place in this country. We need to have the spices and the ideas gathered. But I think to put an affordable meal that's completely grown by the people who take care of the land is something attainable, something realistic. And to bring the food from the farms to the schools without a middleman. Now, mind you, we've been doing at Chez Panisse for 46 years. We're small. We only do 500 people a day. But we use one farm as our primary farm, and then many others that fill in at different times of the year. But we don't have a middle person bringing it to us. It's the farmer. And what happens is the farmer brings the values into the school or into the restaurant, as it would be. I used to tell Bob Kennard what to cook, and now he tells me what I must use. And it's a beautiful relationship that we have.
Well, that does remind me of how farmer Ben Burkett in Mississippi, whom I know you have spent some time with, who delivers, in fact, this week will be delivering to the Edible Schoolyard in New Orleans watermelons from southern Mississippi. But he doesn't just deliver the watermelons. The farmers come with their stories and spend time with the kids. And it is a history lesson. It is a cultural lesson. It's a lesson about land ownership. And people eat together, adult farmers and children in the school. It is bringing supply together with demand, which is significant. But there is, a sort of a major delta between the ambitions of these big ideas and manageable next steps. And I know that in many different ways, we see glimpses of what these next steps look like. I mean, for one, what excites us is that if we think of school lunch as meaning something more than just fuel, and fuel is important, but it's more than just fuel, but a way to tell a story of people and place and product. We think of the Arc of Taste as one of those vehicles, endangered foods that have a place and a time and a story, and that could add value to the lunch table. I know that there is a great desire to identify what are those endangered foods, who's growing them, and where are they, and how do we get them into school menus. I suspect I've heard you say something along these lines before.
Yes, you have. I just don't think it's about the endangered foods, but it's about a way of farming that's endangered. I just saw the film Eating Animals at the Telluride Film Festival, and we all need to see it. But it's based on Jonathan Safran Foer's book, and it's being promoted by Natalie Portman, the actress, who is a voiceover. But many of the farmers that we know and love are in this film as the positive. And it's eye-opening, and we're very worried about people staying in farming in this country. So if schools supported farmers, and the farmers had this security, they would want to do that work. And I know that that's true. Many farmers complain that they don't have security. They have to go so far to get to a farmer's market. They don't know whether people are going to come and buy. And food, I just know community-supported agriculture has always been a very positive, important way for farmers to feel good about their futures. And so school-supported agriculture could be amazing in that respect, bringing young people into farming and a kind of farming that's really nourishing for them, the kind of work that is really meaningful.
Well, not far from you in, relatively, in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles School District has been an interesting and exciting test case for the Good Food Purchasing Program, which has focused especially on chicken that is, sustainably raised chicken or organic chicken, not factory farmed, and making that a requirement together with better labor practices for the poultry that goes into the school system, creating essentially a floor of what is acceptable to feed our kids, and has worked with the school district, worked with labor, worked with the farmers to deliver a higher quality product for for purchasing and requiring that in order to get the contract, you have to meet this certain criteria. So there's some beginning steps to develop programming, to develop policy that is not emanating from Washington, D.C., but it's actually happening in the school districts, and finding some of the, maybe the not the low-hanging fruit, because chickens aren't fruit, but finding the sort of the soft parts of the fence that we can begin to plow through. And so I see some elements that give us some gateway into the schools, whether it is an edible schoolyard project itself, or it's food core, or it's Meatless Monday. It's finding space, the school garden in the school, to begin to transform the culture, and then learning from each other to figure out how do we begin to change the ethics of what food are we serving, how do we get it in there, and for what purposes, and that makes me wonder about some of the pathways. I think many of us are working on different pathways into the school, and often we're reinventing the wheel every time. We're not talking to each other enough, which is one hope that slow food would be one of those connectors. One of the exciting things for the school lunch as an academic subject event in Denver was that Senator Bennett, the senator from Colorado, who used to be a superintendent for schools in Colorado and is on the Senate Ag Committee, attended, and you were able to spend some time with him at lunch, and he spoke very much in support of these ideas. But it does raise the question of Washington, D.C., as we approach the next farm bill, as we look at gridlock in D.C., where are some of the other places where we can punch through, whether it's at the local level, the state level? What are you seeing that's exciting you, or what idea is really kind of grabbing you right now in terms of how we make the change, how we change the conversation away from the bureaucratic reasons why something can't happen to why we are demanding a better way? I don't know if your conversations with Senator Bennett opened up some ideas, or whether there are others that have found other ways to build the support so that there's more of a chorus calling for change.
Well, I am really impatient, as you know.
Impatience is good.
I just feel like we have to go all the way. We don't have the time. We're worried about global warming. We're frightened by it. We have childhood hunger, which is scary. We have 1 in 2 kids going to have diabetes. We have kids dropping out of school and going to jail. We have farmers that are aging and not going to grow real food for us anymore. So we're at a point where we have to do something dramatic. And we have, fortunately, in the state of California, a governor election coming up in a little while. And I have a feeling that we're going to have politicians who are ready to take a risk, to call for free school lunch. Absolutely, for every child in California. But not just that, a free school lunch that supports the farmers and the ranchers who are taking care of the land for the future. And so if this big idea is really embraced, and if the University of California embraces it, then we have a mission that we can all work towards accomplishing. But right now, we need to really get ready for this to happen. And so it's my great hope that slow food will be able to identify all the organic farms across this country, state by state, that they'll be able to figure out what could grow or what is being grown. And we have to think about what should be served. I'm not happy with the pyramid from the USDA at all. I think there is a way that we can nourish kids that has been in culture since the beginning of time, that we can find the affordable foods that people have been eating that are good for you, and we can make our own pyramid, not a pyramid, our own
plate. Our own plate.
Our own plate of delicious food that is really nourishing. And I just feel like, and I guess I feel empowered because I grew up in Berkeley in the 60s. We felt like we stopped the war in Vietnam, that we stood up for social justice and civil rights, that we were not focused on making money. We were focused on really doing something that was meaningful. And I was very lucky that I found the restaurant idea so compelling. But I learned everything that I learned from the French because I lived there for a year in a slow food culture. And I know that these ideas can win people over. And that's what we're good at doing. This is a delicious and pleasurable revolution.
Well, if you are a parent or an educator or just an eater out there, one of the things that is daunting is what meaningful action can I take on? And when you describe the kind of the joie de vivre of the 1960s, where people were no longer scared of taking risks, what would be the kind of individual risks that would be exciting to see people take on? I mean, you described the candidate in Iowa, Austin Frerick. What about the school board? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think the school boards are very important in influencing what happens in our schools. And I would urge all of you to participate in that way, maybe to run for, to be a school board member, or to attend the meetings of the school board, because it's very difficult to get into the schools. They have been really taken over by our fast food culture, and they have become, gated, and they have become unwilling to have volunteers come in even. It's shocking what's gone on. And we want to help, and I know there are many ways we can, but the school board is a place where the decisions are being made about what happens there in the school. We have an enlightened mayor in Berkeley, and it's so exciting because he is advocating for all of the things that we believe in, and he talks about it at every opportunity he can. Now, maybe you have to run for mayor of a little city. Maybe you do. But we have to be in the places where the decisions are being made. And it's all very well and good for me to run my restaurant and do what I do about convincing people who come and eat here. But the next step is really to be a very political eater.
Mm-hmm.
And to take that risk of running for office and to be part of this kind of influence outside of the family.
Well, something that is very within reach is, the cost of running for school board is a lot cheaper than running for some other office. And certainly the evangelical right was very effective in focusing on school board and those offices within reach to begin to cultivate leaders who take risk. And risk is certainly what is almost endemic in the definition of a leader. And I know that when I spend time with the food movement, it is filled with so many leaders. It's one of its great strengths, is it is so decentralized with leaders that are looking for places to land and impact change. I would love to, if you've got time, Alice, to sort of entertain a couple of the questions that have come in. We are pretty bombarded with some marvelous questions. A number about the question of sourcing the supply, addressing the issue of the farmer, whether it's, the actual question of how to maintain pricing and stability, especially with the timing of the school year when there is so much harvested during the summer and kids are off school, was one question from Christina. But there was also another one regarding protein and local farms. And this comes from David in Florida, that he's using protein from a local farm, and the costs are almost 5 times the amount of the protein, meaning the meat, of commodity protein. How are other school systems that are overcoming this issue of 5 times the cost to serve proper, real food? What are they doing to shoulder the price of good food? Are there any strategies, whether it's outside of the US or within the US, that they're finding ways to address this issue of price between commodity meat and quality meat?
Well, when I think about
any insights,
I just think about food that is really not good for you. I really am offended by the idea that food should be cheap. It should be affordable. But if food is cheap, somebody is missing out, and 9 out of 10 times it's the farmer. So I want to pay the farmer the real cost of his or her work. Absolutely. So that again comes from a fast food culture indoctrination. Food should be cheap. But I find that when I know how to cook, that I can use the whole vegetable. I can take one chicken and make 3 meals out of it. I think Jose Andres can make 6, which is great. But we need to think about using meat as a condiment. The Mediterranean culture talks a lot about that, where it's not the big piece on the plate. There's a group in Richmond, California. It's called the Conscious Kitchen. Actually, they're working with the schools in West Marin and in Richmond, and they're making food that where they can get a reimbursement from the federal government, and everything they buy is organic. Everything they buy. And I mean, they invited cooks to come and help them to make food that was delicious and nutritious for the kids. Now, maybe it's a chicken leg that's spiced in a way that is really tasty. It's not using the breast, it's using the legs. But they were serving organic Strauss milk. I haven't tasted that milk in a glass of milk in years. And it was so delicious, and all these kids were drinking. Now, that makes me know that we can make the price point. even of the minimal amount of money that's being given by the federal government. So what would happen if we really had some money to use for a school lunch? It could be amazing. Breakfast, lunch, and an afternoon snack for every child. K through 12.
What I have seen in working with and speaking to the lunch lady is they're so, well, they're dying to be empowered in order to produce food that they are proud of. And in fact, we just got a question from one. Her name is Jennifer, and she asks, what can I do to help besides joining Slow Food USA, which she is about to do, which we think is a wonderful first step. She describes how she provides her kids with alternatives, but the kitchen isn't big enough to bake 800 cookies every day for the kids at a small school.
That's fortunate that they can't bake cookies for kids. I'm really thinking about how you can cook food for large numbers of kids, and it's when you buy that real food from the farms, a lot of times you don't need to do so much to it, and even have the kids participate in the cutting up of fruit that has no, or a tomato, really you just need a little bit of salt, maybe a little olive oil, but things that don't take a lot of preparation or a lot of space. And I'm always thinking about that. I'm hoping to write a cookbook about just that. What can be multiplied out to make a lot, whether it's a polenta or whether it's beans, and how do you cook brown rice with a lot of flavor and spices. But right now, I think we should really focus our money and attention to places where it really is possible, where there are enlightened principles, where there are big enough kitchens that we can work to train people, where there is an openness, where the farmers can come to the school. But we're going to have to use all of our slow food, how should we say, know-how, our great resources in hospitality. At the beginning, I have to say, of the project of the Edible Schoolyard, I used to invite the teachers to eat at Chez Benny's so that they could be given a little bit of a gift while they were having their math meeting. But at the same time, they were absorbing these ideas, and they loved it. And we have to really honor the teachers, the people who are in the lunchrooms and the farmers, and lift them all up with this idea of free school lunch.
So there are many different pathways into the school, and we should utilize the ones that we have and always do it using our values. And I love the recognition of hospitality as an important thing, a good thing, and making people feel welcome. And in particular, recognizing the teachers, the administrators, and hopefully the enlightened superintendents and principals as allies whom we work with. So there is no one path. There are different pathways. Is that right?
But the cafeteria door is open right now. Mm-hmm. It's the one door into the school that's open. We can't go in there and change the curriculum easily. But right. Everyone knows that food in schools is not good for children right now. Everybody knows that the kids are not eating it. Everyone knows that there's something wrong. And what if we brought this fresh air and this light into that space. And even if there's not a cafeteria for a school, we have to invent ways that this could happen effectively. And there are many models around the world. I see them in Japanese schools where the kids reconfigure tables in the classroom and somebody comes by with food on a cart and it's a big soup and you see the children serving it to them. You probably saw Michael Moore's film about the French schools where they're learning about cheeses in the class. But there are so many ways that we can address this. And when Food Corps can come and help us, and when there are parents that could work in the kitchens to prep the vegetables, and we are not utilizing people's hands and their desire to help make this happen. And we need to do that. We really need to find the enlightened places right now where we can demonstrate the worth of this idea.
You're right, the desire is there, and
Yeah.
we should maximize and lean on that desire because we are not alone. There is a national recognition that something is not working in the kitchen. And
there's a hunger to be reconnected again. We're very, very lonely with our computers. It's hard to find love there. And food is about love. Food is about sharing. Food is about really time and place, and deeply about nature. And we have said, once you understand that, once you eat with intention, you fall in love with the farmers and with the land.
And transform a generation who never would have imagined that food and farming would be part of their everyday lives via the school. So Alice, today, am I correct that the biography, Coming to My Senses, Making of a Counterculture Cook, is coming out today?
It is.
That is so exciting.
In fact, I have a copy.
You have a copy there?
It is coming out today, and I hope I can connect as I go on my book tour with young people around the country who will understand how empowering my life was because of people who thought about things differently. And it's a story really just from the beginning of my life to the opening of Chez Panisse. So it's that very personal story.
Well, I saw online that you were coming to BAM in New York and Brooklyn later this month. How do people find out where you are traveling? Is it
I think that may put that up on the Chez Panisse website.
Okay.
But I'm definitely coming to Chicago, going to Chicago, to Washington, D.C., and New York and Los Angeles for sure. And I will make a point of telling you all where I'll be.
That's fabulous. And we will do the links and the shout out from our digital space as well. Also coming up this month, we will be launching the global slow food campaign, Menu for Change. This is where we cook up a better future with our allies in the kitchen, the Slow Food Chefs Alliance, and we'll be staging Meatless Monday events with Anson Mills, featuring 3 Ark of Taste products, the Bene Seeds, Sea Island Red Peas, and Carolina Gold Rice, also with Tomaresca wines. But all of this is meant to remind us that we can change the world. And it takes finite activities, it takes making it public, and it makes it less daunting than this horrible sense that decisions are being made elsewhere and we have no power to change them. And I think that is the slow food idea, to take risk and also to be hopeful. And we certainly hope you take that with you on the road as you share the gospel of how to change the world through food, which is, of course, at the core of what sustains us. I thank everyone for joining us today. I know we've run 5 minutes over, and we know that people have work to get back to and meals to cook. I want to take this moment to remind you and urge you, please, to renew your membership during September, this membership campaign. You can log online to slowfoodusa.org/join. And remember that at least the first 15 people will wind up with a copy of Alice Waters and the Trip to Delicious. And there's another book they'll also wind up with. Isn't that correct, Alice?
Yes. Annie in France, which I wrote about my daughter. And it's when she was young and how all the values that we digested on those summer trips.
Mm. And with summer coming to a close, but the membership campaign launching now would be that time to hop online. And I guess at this point, if I can just thank you, Alice, for giving us an hour of your time on this day, which I know you've got a lot going on with the launch of the book and with a world to change. But I'm grateful that you were able to walk us through the mechanics of this idea of school lunch as an academic subject, because as a model of how lunch could be, by experiencing it, we can begin to walk away with the idea of how lunch should be. And would like to put this to action as many places as we can, because experiential learning does work, doesn't it?
Indeed it does. The best thing in life.
Well, thank you so much, Alice, and best of luck with your book tour. Change the world at every stop. Right. And we will be in touch soon, and encourage others to join us for our next National Town Hall call. And can't thank you more, Alice, for joining us today and getting us up and running in this long month of September that's ahead of us.
I'm very excited. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.